Welcome to the channel. Name of the channel is Truckin with Bill. Normally, my channel is about helping drivers that are new to trucking. But today, I thought we'd do something different. I thought I'd go over the history of the trucking industry in the United States. Now I know some of you guys are going to say, oh no, oh man. But I'm pretty sure that there are those out there that will find this interesting. Or not. Anyway, the trucking industry in the United States has affected the political and economic history of the United States in the 20th century. Before the invention of automobiles, most freight was moved by train or horse-drawn vehicle. During World War I, the military was the first to use trucks extensively. With the increased construction of paved roads, trucking began to achieve significant foothold in the 1930s and soon became subject to various government regulations, such as the hours of service, among others. During the late 1950s and late 1960s, trucking was accelerated by the construction of the interstate highway system. Trucking achieved national attention during the 1960s and 70s, when songs and movies about truck driving were major hits. Truck drivers participated in widespread strikes against the rising cost of fuel during the energy crisis of 1973 and 1979. And the industry was drastically deregulated by the Motor Carrier Act of 1980. Trucking has come to dominate the freight industry in the latter portion of the 20th century, along with what are termed big box stores, such as Walmart and Target. Before 1900, most freight transported over land was carried by trains. Trains were highly efficient. They moved a large amount of freight, but could only deliver that freight to centralized urban centers for distribution by horse-drawn transport. The few trucks that existed at the time were mostly novelties, appreciated more for their advertising space than for their utility. Winton Motor Carriage Company was the first, or built one of the first, trailer trucks, converting a car into a tractor, and made a small trailer to move cars from its factory in 1899. 10 years later, Fruloff experimented with tractor trailers. The use of range-limited electric engines, lack of paved railroads, and small load capacities limited trucks to mostly short-haul urban routes. Starting in 1910, the development of a number of technologies gave rise to the modern trucking industry. With the advent of the gasoline-powered internal combustion engine, improvements in transmissions, the move away from chain drives to gear drives, and the development of the tractor-semi-trailer combination, shipping by truck gained in popularity. In 1913, the first state weight limit for trucks were introduced. Only 4 states limited truck weights in 1913. From a low of 18,000 pounds in Maine to a high of 28,000 pounds in Massachusetts. These laws were enacted to protect the earth and gravel surface roads from damage caused by the iron and solid rubber wheels of earlier trucks. By 1914, there were almost 100,000 trucks on America's roads. However, solid tires, poor rural roads, and a maximum speed limit of 15 miles per hour continued to limit the use of these trucks to mainly urban areas. The years of World War I, 1914 and 1918, spurred the rising truck use and development. During the busy war years, the increased congestion of railroads exposed the need for alternative modes of transporting cargo. It was during these years that pneumatic tires capable of supporting heavier loads were developed, which enabled trucks to drive at higher speeds. 2 truck manufacturers that emerged during this time were a former sewing machine maker, White and Mack. In 1920, there were over 1 million trucks on America's roads. The years beyond 1920 saw several advancements, such as improved rural roads, the introduction of the diesel engine, which is 25 to 40% more efficient than gasoline engines, the standardization of truck and trailer sizes, along with fifth wheel coupling systems, as well as power assisted brakes and steering. By 1933, all states had some form of varying truck weight regulation. In 1933, as part of President Franklin D. Roosevelt's big deal, New Deal, excuse me, the National Recovery Administration requested that each industry create a code of fair competition. The American Highway Freight Association and the Federated Trucking Associations of America met in the spring of 1933 to speak for the Trucking Association and began discussing the code. By the summer of 1933, the Code of Competition was completed and ready for approval. The 2 organizations had also merged to form the American Trucking Association. The code was approved on February 10th, 1934. And on May 21st, 1934, the first president of the ATA, Ted Rogers, became the first truck operator to sign the code. A special Blue Eagle license plate was created for truck operators to indicate compliance with the code. In 1935, Congress passed the Motor Carrier Act, which replaced the Code of Competition and authorized the Interstate Commerce Commission, which was known as ICC to regulate the trucking industry. Based on recommendations given by the now abolished ICC, Congress enacted the first hours of service regulations in 1938, limiting the driving hours of truck and bus drivers. In 1941, the ICC reported that inconsistent weight limitations imposed by the states were a hindrance to effective interstate truck commerce. Also in 1941, President Roosevelt appointed a special committee to explore the idea of a national inter-regional highway system. But the committee's progress was halted by the initiation of World War II. After the war was over, the Federal Aid Highway Act of 1944 authorized the designation of what are now termed interstate highways, but did not include a funding program to build the highways. Limited progress was made until President Dwight D. Eisenhower renewed interest in the plan in 1954. This began a long, bitter debate between various interests, such as rail, truck, tire, oil, and farm groups, over who would pay for the new highways and how. Nobody wanted to pay, but they wanted to drive on them. After compromises had been made, the Federal Aid Highway Act of 1956 authorized the construction of the interstate highway system, an interconnected network of controlled access freeways that allowed larger trucks to travel at higher speeds through rural and urban areas. This act also authorized the first federal maximum gross vehicle weight limits for trucks, set at 73,280 pounds. In that same year, modern containerized intermodal shipping was pioneered by Malcolm McLean, allowing for more efficient transfer of cargo between trucks, trains, and ships. In the late 1950s, the American Association of State Highway and Transportation Officials, known as AASHTO, conducted a series of extensive field tests of roads and bridges to determine how traffic contributed to the deterioration of pavement materials. These tests led to a 1964 recommendation by AASHTO to Congress that the gross weight limit for trucks should be determined by a bridge formula table based on axle lengths. By 1970, there were over 18 million trucks on America's roads. The Federal Aid Highway Amendments of 1974 established a federal maximum gross vehicle weight of 80,000 pounds and introduced a sliding scale of truck weight to length ratios based on the bridge formula, but did not establish a federal minimum weight limit. Consequently, 6 states in the Mississippi Valley refused to increase their interstate weight limits to 80,000 pounds. And the trucking industry effectively faced a barrier to efficient cross-country interstate commerce. It's always got to be one. In this case, 6. The decade of the 70s saw the heyday of truck driving and the dramatic rise in the popularity of trucker culture. Truck drivers were romanticized as modern-day cowboys and outlaws. And this stereotype persists even today. This was due in part to their use of CB radios, citizen band radios, to relay information to each other regarding the locations of police officers and transportation authorities. Plaid shirts, trucker hats, CB radios, using CB slang were all popular, not just for drivers, but among the general public as well. In 1976, the #1 hit on the Billboard chart was Convoy, a novelty song by C.W. McCall about a convoy of truck drivers evading speed traps and toll booths across America. The song inspired the 1978 action film Convoy. After the film's release, thousands of independent truck drivers went on strike and participated in violent protests during the 1979 energy crisis, although similar strikes had occurred during the 1973 energy crisis. The year 1977 saw the release of Smokey and the Bandit. By the start of the 80s, the trucking phenomenon had waned. And with the rise of cellular phone technology, the CB radio was no longer popular with passenger vehicles. Although truck drivers still use it today. CB radios are very popular even today with truck drivers. The Motor Carrier Act in 1980 partially deregulated the trucking industry, dramatically increasing the number of trucking companies in operation. The trucking workforce was dramatically deunionized, resulting in lower overall pay for drivers. Trucking had lost its spotlight in popular culture and have become less intimate among drivers due to the increase of both motor carriers and truck drivers. However, deregulation increased the competition and productivity within the trucking industry as a whole, and was beneficial to the American consumer by reducing cost. The Surface Transportation Assistance Act of 1982 established a federal minimum for truck weight limits, which finally standardized truck size and weight limits across the country for traffic on the interstate highways. By 2006, there were over 26 million trucks on America's roads, and representing nearly 70% of the total volume of freight. Many automobile drivers are largely unfamiliar with large trucks, and many accidents are the result of these drivers being unaware of an 18-wheeler's numerous and large blind spots. The Occupational Safety and Health Administration has determined that 70% of fatal automobile, tractor-trailer accidents were the result of unsafe actions of automobile drivers. Guys, you know, trucking has come a long ways since the early 1900s. There have been many changes and much progress, from gasoline engines to diesel engines. In the early 1900s, one would never have dreamed that we would have the trucks that we have today. And upon saying that, one may find it hard to believe the trucks that we may have tomorrow. It's coming, and it's just around the bend. The electric truck. I hope you have enjoyed being with me today. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them down below. Subscribe, give me a big thumbs up, and ring that bell. Until next time, safe trucking, happy travels, stay safe.